Good day and hello, my name is Brian. This video is going to be a little different than some of the other ones. I'm actually going to describe one of the projects that I've actually been thinking about in different ways. Now, I've put a lot of thought behind a lot of these. There's still a lot of holes in them, I guess you can say. But, I've circled them in enough. You go and figure out that there's ways around them and, there's ways to progress through it. I guess you could say it's an outline of a project. Now, I'm not going to go into full detail on this because obviously I don't want people to steal exactly what I have, but I wouldn't mind seeing someone trying to apply it. Now, part of this is also an experiment to see how to phrase some of my different ideas and express them in a different way beyond the tools of thought stuff. And this project has two pieces which I'm going to present. I actually see a lot more on it, but I'm only going to present two. So first I'm going to set up the different elements to point out the different things that I see this as. One, stepping up through and then helping solve a certain different problems in different ways. Part of it is also how to even get the idea out there in the first place. Now, this project deals with energy, generation of energy for a large city, one. Two, also deals with air quality standards and also how to trace back and also maintain certain standards within a city, dealing with the health and welfare type aspect. And also because of the resources needed to actually complete such a project, it also does provide for a lot of jobs. And after it's actually in place, also helps provide, resources and also maybe not so big on the maintenance side of it, but it provides for a lot of different things afterwards. So, dealing with the initial rundown on this is, I used as a partial mental model for this New York City. I don't know New York City very well, but enough of it to see that this does fit. Basically, dealing with the idea of air quality is if you take a sample of air at, say, this block junction, between two different streets, and you see that there's a high concentration of something, maybe toxic or not toxic, well, the thing is, did it originate there? And how do you trace back where that actually originated? If you have a high concentration of something toxic in the air at that location, well, how do you more quickly track down to where the actual source of that contamination came from? And right now, there's a couple methods you probably could use to do that, but I'm interested, one, in, it's toxic. It's something that's harmful to the environment and also to the people in it. So it's something you want to take care of in a speedy manner. Most of the methods that I see right now aren't exactly probably as fast as this probably would be. Obviously, there's still some room for error. It's just like any other process. Well, what this is basically you craft a very simple device. Basically, it's a little wind meter and a wireless device. Now, that's just the simple piece. Now, you craft actually a lot of these. And what you do is you hang them on the outside of all the buildings. Now, what this does is, one is you get a reading of which way the wind is blowing, the force of the wind, and also if you actually scale up all the way outside of the buildings, you also get, of course, the height of where this wind is and the direction of the wind, and you can actually map out the wind flow inside New York City. Now, part of the benefits of this is if you actually put it together right, is you can actually use the wind meter itself to actually power the wireless device. So you don't even have to jack into the system of the building itself. It can actually be a separate piece. And then from the networking setup is, you share the information across the whole sub-network of itself, and you can actually get the information to where you need it to go. And from that, you generate a map of the winds inside New York City. And from that, using it for the air quality standards, you take an air quality standard at this, is if you see toxicity, you pull up the map and you can see where the wind flow is at that point in time and where that wind came from. And you can trace back a little bit easier and figure out where it possibly came from. And that's the first initial benefit. Now, of course, that's a simple thing. Now, the thing is, you have to remember, you have now a wind map of New York City. Well, because you have that wind map, you can see where all the strong flows are, the weak flows are, and also get a general idea of the different sub-weather effects within New York City. Well, what if you could start then directing it? You know, you see the strong concentration of flow at this point, you put a baffling system, or however you wish to phrase the wording, which you can then redirect the flow in a different location and then start directing the wind in New York City in different ways. You can then actually have high gusts of wind in the higher areas where you don't have windows, no open interference with things, and just a gentle breeze at the lower level. Well, you now have the control of the wind of New York City, set up central buildings in different locations with wind turbines, and direct the high gust of winds into those buildings to actually start generating energy. You then have a self-system right there which actually generates power within New York City without having one at either the tidal fronts putting wind turbines out in the water or putting wind turbines out in a field around it, and also supplement energy to New York City. And it's just all from initially a very simple device. Yes, there's a large amount of it. Like I said, you probably do it in a grid throughout New York City of basically a little wind turbine with a wireless device. And that's all it really is. And from that, like I said, you get a wind map, which you can, of course, use for air quality, which would be a good way to put this in the first place. And you also generate jobs initially for making all these devices and mounting these devices. Then, of course, from the benefits of actually having these devices up and running, you can also use the network, of course, to find problem pieces or pieces that have gone faulty and have it go out and repair. But two is also you now have the wind map of New York City. You can then, of course, make better decisions on how to adjust dealing with the atmosphere of New York City, knowing where the wind flow comes from. And from there is if you can figure out how to direct the wind flow, you can also then pull energy more directly out of that system. And the devices themselves already run off partially that energy. And I already gave this idea partially to someone, but I never heard any feedback, so someone technically might boot it up off of me anyways. Oh well. Someone else might take this idea and run with it also. Well, like I said, I've actually worked through a lot of the interesting problems involved in such a piece. Enough of the outline where I can actually start pointing my nose in it, but I've looked at the devices and how to make something like that very simply. And there's also a lot of interesting other side benefits to it later if you actually set it up right. I'm not going to really say much about those because they're interesting. But there's some food for thought. And like I said, that's one of the many projects I've actually figured out some interesting stuff on how to do things. I hope you have a beautiful day. And of course, like I said, I'm always looking for any feedback. Bye.